It was 8 years ago when my wife Marcia received her first shipment of Bet's Beer shampoo. I didn't understand what all the excitement was about when she opened the package, but she was happy, and I was happy. 6 brown containers of shampoo that looked exactly like long-necked beer bottles. From then on, every 6 weeks she received another shipment. Marcia and I were married for 22 years. We had no children. We lived in comfort and affluence. I was a marketing manager for a small company that manufactured industrial sump pumps. Marcia didn't work and never wanted to. We had no problems financially or personally. Then I blew it by being curious. I took Marcia's Kia in for an oil change. I happened to notice that she had 2 house keys on her keychain. I know this is not unusual, but since I only had 1 key, I couldn't help but wonder what the second key was for. This annoyed me wildly, so on the way home I stopped and made a copy. I guess I could have just asked her, but for some reason I didn't. For the next 2 months I walked around with this strange key in my pocket. The first Tuesday of every month is poker night. This month it was at Parker's apartment. Jeff Parker was the human resources manager at Edison Pump Works. We had known each other for over a decade. Parker was the only player in our group of 6 who wasn't married. The other 4 players were also Edison employees. We had been playing together for several years. The host usually supplied the appetizers. The only difference this time was the chili peppers that Benny Sisk insisted each of us try. It was his wife's favorite recipe. Unfortunately, after about an hour, we all got a little carried away and the restroom became very stuffy. Rather than wait for a seat to become available, I ducked into Parker's bedroom and used the master bath. I finished with the toilet paper and opened the dressing table to grab a spare roll. That's when everything went into tatters. On the second shelf, a bottle of Betty's Beer shampoo was prominently displayed. Next to the bottle was a selection of women's cosmetics that looked all too familiar. The game stopped shortly thereafter. The chili went to all of us. As I left, I discreetly made sure that the extra key Marcia had was a perfect match for Jeff's front door. The next day, I was worthless at work. All I could think about were 5 questions. I knew where, what, and who, but I didn't know when, and I didn't want to know why. By 5 o'clock, I had a pretty clear idea of when. It had to be Friday. The weekly sales production meeting I had lasted from 9 to 11 a.m. Jeff Parker did not attend that meeting. Chances were slim, but it was the best time for Marcia and Jeff to meet. Of course, it could have happened on weekends when she was shopping or out for some other reason. I caught myself thinking about the whole situation as a whole. I wasn't looking for absolute proof, just a small degree of confirmation. I left work a little early and headed downtown. I found what I was looking for at the Far East Market. Fortunately, the Oriental food stores in our neighborhood usually have an assortment of Indian goods. For $10, I bought 3 cans of henna tattoo dye, guaranteed to last 7 to 10 days. Would it work? I had no idea. In fact, I couldn't wait to try it. It was fine at home. At that point, I was avoiding any confrontation, but I knew it was coming soon. Of course, now I was faced with a new dilemma. What was I going to do after the great reveal? Another sleepless night as I compared all my options and hoped for sleep, which came slowly. Thursday morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I called a recruiter. I had never really used their services much before, but now that had changed. The guy I chose was the one I felt most comfortable with. We updated resumes over the phone, and I settled on either Charlotte or Huntsville. I told him not to call me back until Friday afternoon at the earliest. I didn't want him bugging me to death. Jeff Parker had a staff fundraiser that day. I took advantage of that to go to his house and do the dirty work. Surgical gloves were essential. I dumped all 3 cones of henna into a shampoo bottle and left with a big smile. After dinner, I spent the rest of the evening on the computer. Things that I didn't care about before suddenly became important. By the time I went to bed, it was very late. The next morning, I spotted Jeff leaving the building as I started my weekly meeting. The day promised to be interesting. At noon, I wandered into HR to see if Jeff was free for lunch. I gave a look of great surprise when his secretary informed me that Jeff had a family emergency and would be in Baltimore all next week. On the way back to my office, I wondered if my wife would make a similar call or if she would wait for me at home. I had a box of sushi bento for lunch. My headhunter had set up 3 potential interviews for me, 2 in Charlotte and 1 in Huntsville. I told him to schedule the Alabama interview for Monday and notified my boss that I would be taking the day off. I spent the rest of the day getting my finances in order and killing time. When I got home, Marcia was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in her hands. She was wearing old sweatpants. Her blonde hair was partially dyed with dark red henna, which was also dripping down her face and neck. She had let her hair air dry and hadn't brushed it. It appeared that she tried to wash the dye off her face, but it didn't work. The parts of her body that were not colored were left with red spots from the intense rubbing. I got the feeling she wanted to say something, but nothing came off her lips. She didn't notice my smile as I turned and walked out the door. I had a nice ribeye planned for dinner. I think I'm going to like it in Huntsville.